Welcome everyone. I think it's just gone 10:30. So we'll start the cabinet meeting for the 25th of June 2025. Do I need to check if we're online or anything like that? We are online. Brilliant. Okay. So there's a few housekeeping arrangements. Remind those joining remotely to mute their microphones when you're not speaking. I saw Andrew earlier. He's disappeared now. But Will, I see you there. And reminder that it's live streamed. Talk into your microphone. And I'm assuming that you've all read the papers. And there's a please do not share any presentations on the screen until the item commences. Ask people on screen to turn off their videos until they speak. So those are a few housekeeping things. Let's move on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, apologies.
No apologies from any members of the cabinet, but Councillor Michael Fife-Cook has given apologies as group leader.
Yeah, I understand he's taking his wife to hospital, so wish her a speedy recovery and best regards. Declarations of interests, members. I think if there is something that comes up in an item, then declare it then is probably the best to do it, unless there's something that you know already that do that. So any declarations at this stage? No. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting on the 23rd of May. Are you happy that I sign those as correct record? Yep, thank you. Excellent. Item 4, items requiring urgent attention. I'm not aware of any. Item 5, announcements. There are none to my knowledge. 6, petitions. There are no petitions. 7, questions from members of the council. There are no questions. 8, questions from members of the public. There are no questions from members of the public. 9 is the revenue and capital outturn for 24-25. James, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor James Witkowski, Cabinet Member for Finance. Leader, today we present the Revenue and Capital Outturn Report for 2024-25, an outturn looking back at the previous administration and a critical opportunity to take stock of where we are, what we've inherited and what comes next. Let me say from the outset that this isn't a report to downplay or dress up. It's one that deserves serious reflection, not spin. Our role is not to rehash past battles, but we cannot ignore the realities. We're entering a new era of leadership, one that leaves behind the punch and judy politics, but also refuses to brush over the hard truths. And here is the simple truth. Devon residents voted overwhelmingly for change, not incremental change, not cosmetic change, real change in how this council leads, how it manages money and how it treats people. That is the responsibility we carry into every decision we make from this point forward. So what does this outturn tell us? Yes, technically, the council ended the year in balance. The general fund sits at £16 million and earmarked reserves excluding schools closed at 121 million. On paper, we have delivered a break-even position against a net budget of 637.5 million. And yes, there is a reported £3.2 million underspend. But Leader, I'm going to be honest, I find it hard to get particularly excited by that. On a budget of this scale, 3.2 million is barely material, less than 0.5%. And once you strip out government windfalls, the flexible use of capital receipts and in-year underspending driven by vacancy slippage and delays, it's clear that performance was not by design. The risk is that we fall into the trap of mistaking survival for stability, of accepting this outturn as a sign of financial strength when in reality it masks deep-seated fragility. So let's look at what underpins this position. 6.5 million of revenue costs were capitalised through the flexible use of capital receipts, including 3.9 million that would otherwise have been drawn from reserves, and 1.8 million redirected to the SEND Resilience Reserve. 861,000 came from last-minute national business rate surplus, a one-off gift from government, if you like, that cannot be repeated. Contingency budgets of over 4 million were released because they were not spent, not because underlying costs were brought down. Provisions for bad debt and insurance were increased by £1 million each, sensible and prudent, but also reflective of risk. This was not a planned or strategic underspend, but it was a result of reactive last-ditch measures, emergency brakes applied in a system already sliding off course. Leader, it must be noted that officers have worked incredibly hard to hold things together, and that work really does deserve recognition. delivering £40.2 million worth of savings, even against the 49.6 million target, is not nothing. We also need to look closely at the pressures that continue to build in key service areas. Integrated adult social care overspent by 4.9 million. Costs are rising due to increased demand for older people's bed-based care, higher per user costs for disability support, and persisting staffing gaps. Children and young people's futures overspent by 5.5 million. The biggest driver, a 14.9 million overspend on independent placements due to rising volumes and placement costs, a market failing to meet need and in-house capacity falling short. On highways, we saw a 2.2 million pound overspend on potholes and 1.2 million on emergency response, offset by reduced planned works. While there were areas of underspend, including 2.4 million in public health and 1.9 million in climate change, environment, transport, much of this was due to slippage rather than strategy. But the most dangerous and urgent pressure is undoubtedly SEND. Let me be crystal clear, the financial targets agreed with the Department for Education under the Safety Valve programme have not been met. The 24-25 overspend on DSG SEND was 51.4 million, bringing the total accumulated deficit to 169.1 million pounds, far beyond what is manageable or sustainable. And leader, let's not kid ourselves. This is a consequence of more than a decade of underinvestment, poor planning and short-term thinking. Devon SEND system is under immense strain, and while there is no quick fix, what we will not do is continue to paper over the cracks. The use of capital receipts to fund SEND transformation is understandable, but it cannot continue indefinitely. We need system-wide reform, proper national funding and real accountability. And this administration is committed to leading that change. On capital, the picture is mixed. The council delivered 178.7 million of capital investment out of a 250 million programme, a delivery rate of around 71%. The majority of slippage was in large infrastructure schemes, including climate and transport projects, while 82% of the capital spend was externally funded, which is a strength, but it also increases dependency on grants and contributions, many of which come with strings attached and limited certainty. A 3.3 million addition to the 25-26 capital programme for Oakhampton interchange is also proposed in this report. This is following a revised project estimates and updated design requirements. This is welcome, but again highlights the cost inflation pressures facing every part of our capital pipeline. So leader, where does this leave us? Our message today must be one of realism and resolve. The council ended the year in balance, but just barely. £40 million of savings were achieved. The SEND deficit continues to grow and risks breaching the limits of what's financially and politically acceptable. Financial resilience hangs in the balance, depending on non-repeatable actions. It's clear that the previous administrations have depleted cash reserves, increasingly relying on internal and, in the final year, external borrowing to fund spending and transformation, rather than maintaining financial resilience. Local government remains fundamentally underfunded, a problem that began under the Conservatives and so far shows little sign of change under the current Labour government. Our task now is to reset the conversation, to rebuild trust with officers, with residents and with government. And leader, we will lead this council differently, with honesty and transparency and with a clear-eyed view of both the risks and the opportunities ahead. This outturn marks the end of the financial year, but more importantly, it marks the beginning of a new chapter for Devon, one in which the old ways of working, of deferral, drift and denial, will be replaced by action, accountability and ambition. Let's be under no illusions about the scale of challenge, leader, but let's also be absolutely clear, this cabinet is ready for it. Thank you, leader.
Thank you, James. And I've been a county councillor for 20 years, and I don't think I've ever heard such a candid response to the financial position that we find ourselves in. So thank you, James. I think that's a real credit to you. And absolutely, I hope that all cabinet members and indeed all the council realise that this is the challenge that we face, and we are going to be honest and upfront, and hopefully we can bring everyone with us, including the public. But thank you very much for that. Right, members, and any other comments to make? No. We've got a set of recommendations there. I mean, James, you happy to move those recommendations as they are on the order paper there?
I am, leader, yes.
Yeah, and I'll second those. So can I see all of those in favour, please show? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Excellent. Not great news, but realistic. agenda item 10, homes for children and young people. Richard.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Richard Jeffries, Children's Social Services. I wanted to introduce this as we find ourselves in a position where for too long there have not been sufficient or ideal accommodation options for children in Devon, and this leads us to as has been highlighted by Ofsted in their recent inspection. The recommendations in the report will help us move towards changing the way we provide homes and accommodation for children in Devon. And there are so many opportunities that come from this process. I'm excited that we can move towards a better system overall. The knock-on benefits of providing enough homes, appropriate homes in our locality, will help drive the overall improvement of the service by removing inefficiencies as basic as travel time for staff and many others. And I just wanted to highlight that this is only one part of the jigsaw of the improvement that's needed across the service. But by having our children the right accommodation based in Devon, this will help with that process and be able to push through more improvements as we continued in our commitments as Julian and we made in our first statement of both protecting and helping our children in Devon to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. No, it's good. And Julian, I don't know if you wanted to add any.
Certainly, Leader. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity for children in Devon to have some of the best provision going. What we're asking for is, and this reflects previous council decisions to want to bring in not-for-profit organisations into Devon to provide support in to children's home sector, which reflects some of the challenges both nationally and particularly locally about high profits being made by some children's home providers and at the same time not meeting children's outcomes. So this is really a fantastic initiative which we are launching. Neighbouring Somerset have done a similar process, and also other parts of the country have as well. So what we're looking to develop is a relationship with a not-for-profit provider who will commit and invest in Devon in a significant way and bring significant resources and expertise to provide a range of homes for some of the children of our most complex needs. This will also help in terms of addressing some of the budget issues identified earlier in terms of previous reports, where we're spending a lot of money when not necessarily delivering the right outcomes for those children. So I'm confident this process will help in that. To be clear, we are an advantage in Devon being a size and scale which will enable a not-for-profit provider to come into Devon. And obviously colleagues will be aware that we host the Regional Adoption Agency for the South West, and also we have a national resource which we host as well in Devon. So we expect to have some interest from providers. There are not many out there, not-for-profit, who we would regard as good quality providers, but we think Devon will be in a good place. I'm also pleased to inform members that we have interest from some of our authorities close to us who don't have the scale to attract this type of provider. So we would expect to be able to work with them in terms of helping, assisting them with some of their challenges as well. Happy to answer any questions.
No, thank you for that. Are there any questions, comments, members? Can I just say, I mean, I think this is good news, and absolutely particularly pleased about the idea that we're going to, and we are as one with the government in this particular area, looking to take out the immoral practice of people making profit out of the most vulnerable children that we have in our communities, and this is a start, and hopefully we can progress with that as well. Jackie, do you want?
Thank you. Yeah, I thought this was a very good report and a good move forward. I think it's really important that we do actually have much more of a hands-on, especially with the amount of money that we're spending and the way that the public are looking to see how we spend money on all of our children's services. But I think ultimately it's going to be a much better quality service. And I think being at the at the behest of any private company that offers homes, as opposed to being able to design and provide what we need for our children ourselves as best we can. I understand it's going to be still a third-party arrangement, but I think it's, bringing it back and taking some of the profit out of it will hopefully stop some of these sort of like the keen eyes of investors looking at these things rather than the keen eyes of people who care about young people and their outcomes. Thank you.
No, absolutely right, Jackie.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'd just like to ask a question of Mr. Worcester, if I may, as the local government reorganisation bore in the room. Where does this go in terms of how long the contract will be, or how long the arrangement will be, and what could happen in the event of local government reorganisation? I know that's a tricky one because we don't know, but I'd be interested in your speculation on it.
Yeah, so I think, what's critical is having the investment from a provider, not-for-profit provider who can operate at scale, means that we need a long-term contract to attract that provider into that set of arrangements. There'll be break clauses in any contract. We'll go through a process of discussing with potential providers about what do they want to see. In a sense, we need to be attracted to them, and I think Devon will be, but we need to negotiate with them about what they can offer and that pace that they can offer up. I think there is some uncertainty in the market in terms of providers who look at authorities in terms of what scale they can bring. So I think there will be some hesitancy if they perceive that Devon's going to be broken up into very small authorities in terms of some of those issues. And we know from my work supporting other areas of the country where what will happen is that one authority will host that service as opposed to it being split across several authorities in that space. That creates its own set of issues. That means that you have to have very good working relationships between councils. That can be a struggle at times, given differences politically and resource-wise and all those sort of issues as well. So I would put a hesitancy of concern around LGR in terms of impact. And I know, talking from other directors in other councils, large county councils, for example. So we have two authorities which are supporting our improvement journey. They are both big counties, and that's Essex and Hertfordshire. And obviously we are concerned about the impact on the LGR in terms of those councils as well, and their ability to support improvement journey, obviously not just in Devon, but in terms of other authorities. The reality is that small local authorities do not have the capacity to drive the improvement at scale that we need across, in Devon, but also across the country more generally.
No, thank you for that. Chief Exec.
I just want to make sure that members are note the point about therapeutic schools that will be subject to another report, but is absolutely linked into this. And to point out to members that other councils across the country have received funding from government. So when these type of developments have happened before, I know that, for example, in a close by authority, nearly £5 million was provided by national government to develop this work. So I think it's important that members are alert to that, to consider what kind of support we should be asking national government, particularly when it aligns with policy changes and also it aligns with the needs in terms of our young people for more therapeutic type schools linked to the inclusion piece. And also I think we must link it into the education funding in Devon, where a school chief executive told me on Monday, who runs schools in Dorset, Plymouth and in Devon, and was saying that he was having to reduce staff in the trust in Devon because the uplift was 0.5%, whereas in the other two authorities, the uplift of funding was 1.4% and 1.6%. So, you know, other authorities getting 3 times the amount of uplift funding than Devon is receiving. So I think in terms of opportunities for funding the education system in Devon, I'm happy to provide the Cabinet members with that detail from that school trust. And we do have a further paper that one of the directors has produced in terms of the impact of this ongoing long-standing underfunding of Devon schools, but I think it's linked to this piece about funding for education in Devon. So I just wanted to make the connection to the paper that's coming, make the connection to current funding, and then also make the connection to, if the ambition of the council is to ensure that our children are in school every day, our most vulnerable children in care, then we need the right type of education provision in the system, and we just don't have that at this moment in time. So I just wanted to note those comments alongside this, and perhaps Cabinet could consider how we articulate this to national government as soon as possible.
No, thank you, Donna. And unfortunately, that's reflected the extra cost that it for us to deliver the services that we have to, and it's at the moment doesn't seem to be recognised by government. And to be fair, it's been successive governments, and we need to make that case loud and clear, but in a constructive way, I think, rather than just go with a begging bowl. Show that this is what we can do with the kind of investment that we're putting in here. This can make a massive difference to the most vulnerable children, and if government support us on that journey, then we will make a difference. And in the medium to longer term, that will actually save money, and that's where to do it. So, but thank you for that, Donna. Just to say that Andrew Ledbetter is having trouble with his Wi-Fi, so it's why he's not on screen. And you know, as the former Cabinet member for Children's Services, obviously he was instrumental in this to a certain extent. And just to say that he fully supports it, and also to put on record my thanks to the work that he did in bringing this to the stage that we've got at, as well as officers. Right. So, and any more on this? In which case, Richard, did you want to propose the recommendations as they are?
I'd like to propose the recommendations as they are.
Excellent, thank you. And I'll happily second those. And then could I have a show of hands, all those in favour? Thank you, excellent. Agenda item 11, Household Support Fund. Cheryl, over to you.
Hello, I think that's me. Cheryl Cottle-Hunkin, Cabinet Member for Rural Affairs. As the title suggests, this is the seventh household support fund from the Department of Work and Pensions since 2021. This is the first time that the fund has decreased. It's gone down nearly 12% from over 10 million down to £8,926,693. The primary objective is to provide crisis support to vulnerable households in the most need with the cost of essentials. The secondary objective is to provide preventative support to prevent vulnerable households from falling into or falling further into crisis. Over 60,000 households received support from the last household support fund, so we can be assured that the means of distribution provide impact and reach. The cost of living crisis continues to impact many people and households in Devon, as I'm sure we're all aware. The Citizens Advice Report Q3 highlighted levels of household debt are 81% higher on average, and around 80,000 households in Devon are in a negative income position where income is less than outgoings. The Cabinet is recommended to maintain the allocation of free school meals holiday vouchers. Currently, an estimated 22,200 children are eligible for these vouchers over the school holidays and would continue to receive £15 per week for the 13 weeks of school holidays over the year. The district and city council hardship schemes, all district and city councils would be provided with a funding allocation based on the universal credit uptake in their respective areas and would provide an open application based scheme. Citizens Advice Devon will provide an application energy and water relief scheme. Early Help will provide financial support for food and other essential costs to eligible low-income households with children and young people. The Devon Community Foundation Food, Fuel and More grant scheme, and Devon County Council continues to provide a small pilot fund to support care leavers struggling financially. This has been deployed by the corporate parenting team. There are 3 options in the report, and Cabinet is recommended to approve option 3, which is that Devon County Council distributes the HSF7 allocation and establishes a Devon County Council contingency fund to support vulnerable families. As part of this report, I also want to draw attention to the fact that the government has announced that this will be the final year of the Household Support Fund scheme. As part of the spending review earlier this month, we were told that they will instead be establishing a new Crisis and Resilience Fund. I feel there's a real worry here. We have no indication of what that will mean for us here in Devon. The recent ceasing of the Rural Services Fund, with funding being directed to urban areas of deprivation, raises concern that if a similar approach is used with the new Crisis Resilience Fund, Devon County Council are likely to receive a significantly lower allocation here too. Devon was also not mentioned anywhere in the spending review, which offered nothing for rural areas and no rural strategy. So I'd like to make an additional recommendation that we take this opportunity to write to central government and our Devon MPs, highlighting the lack of clarity on this new fund and our concern for our rural communities. I would like to highlight the high levels of deprivation and inequalities here in Devon and the inaccuracies of using the index of multiple deprivation. This does not accurately reflect rural deprivation and disguises rural need. We need to campaign for rural weightings on IMD and need to properly recognise nested rural deprivation across Devon. As a side note for the council to consider, I'm aware of the Poverty Truth Commission taking place in Ilfracombe and would love to see a Poverty Truth Commission for the more rural and remote parts of the county. This could then be used to help develop strategies and be used as evidence for our future work as a council to support rural communities. And there's a few statistics here. So full-time salaries in North Devon are amongst the lowest in the country at only 31,735, where the national average is 37,617. And Torridge, where I'm from, is in the bottom 10% of districts in the country for social mobility. Rural and coastal areas of Devon experience higher levels of social isolation and loneliness, coupled with higher levels of self-harm admissions and lower levels of referral to psychological therapies. The suicide rate is above the national average in Devon, 13.7 per 100,000 versus 10.7 for England, and that's higher again in more remote rural and coastal communities. And then highlighting Ilfracombe, where a lot of work has been done. Ilfracombe has the lowest life expectancy of any rural town in England, just 71 years for men and 79 years for women. And worse still, the healthy life expectancy in Ilfracombe is just 59 years, which is 14 years lower than the best place in Devon. So that really shows the inequalities that we have here in Devon. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. That was quite, hard-hitting, and I'm absolutely thrilled that you're there to represent our rural communities and point out the rural deprivation that is there. I mean, we live in a beautiful part of the world, but that papers over the cracks of deprivation that we all know as councillors that we do have. Members, and any more to add on that? Simon, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to it.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, simply to say, in terms of the delivery of the Household Support Fund, the Council and Devon as a whole has a really strong track record in the eyes of government and the Department of Work and Pensions in terms of our delivery. We've got a really strong partnership made up of local councils and colleagues from the voluntary community sector in terms of the distribution of funding. And over the years, we've learnt in terms of how we best target some of the funding, the kind of best gateways and vehicles that are described in the paper. And, you know, obviously any decision you make today will importantly provide the clarity to those funders in order for them to plan the distribution over the next few months of the fund, and to get it out to the families that need it most. Chair.
Thank you. I'll go to Jackie and then come to you, Paul.
I don't think anybody needs me to tell them there's a lot of people really suffering out there, but it's not just the suffering in reality of the lack of finance and the, you know, not knowing where the next, you know, what's going to happen next, which is always the bigger worry, but also just the sheer level of stress that this is putting on families. You know, we see this so much in what's happening with children. I mean, it's part of what one of the early reports was looking at about the stress in families where everybody's having to go to work and feeling like they're just getting worse off as they keep going. So I think anything that we can do to try and make sure that we can get as much finance to families. I mean, I think in some ways it's pretty awful that it has to be that catch up all the time, that people are working hard and they still don't get enough to pay the bills that are, you know, that are landing on their doorstep every morning. But I think there's something about this, a feeling that, you know, if your local authority's got your back, and that we have that understanding in how families do need this sort of support, then I think that's a really important element of people feeling that little bit more secure and that they can come to us and see what's possible. But I just, you know, I just feel something's very wrong in society at the moment with all this crisis, this household crisis. It's manufactured. It's not something that should be happening in this country. But nevertheless, we need these funds, and thank you for them being there.
Thank you, Jackie. Paul.
Thank you, Leader. I'm just going to quickly declare a non-effects disclosable interest here as a leader of the District Council, which will be one of the ways in which this money is distributed. While I'm doing that, just to say how delighted I am if we do go for option 3, that's what we're going to do, because there is a lot of officer and member talent out there in districts close to where this is happening. And I think the only other thing I want to say, Leader, is after, you know, a remarkable piece of analysis by James on finance and by Richard and Julian on children and children's homes, you know, to be honest, Cheryl almost topped it all there. That was a deeply moving speech, and thank you for it. And it does emphasize where we're starting from here. And you know that the outcomes that Cheryl informed us about in Ilfracombe are truly a red flag, and we must be careful. We must ensure that the family of Devon is one family, and that those people who live in all of our areas are helped by all of our councils. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Very well put. Any more? I mean, just to say, I mean, Simon, you talked about it, and Paul, you've alluded to it there about it's not just the county, but it's the districts and other agencies who help us to disperse this funding, which is very welcome. And whereas all the headlines have been about the winter fuel payments, actually the household support fund is equally, if not more important, because it's targeted not just at pensioners but at everyone, and what, you know, families that are struggling too. And unlike the winter fuel payments, and I understand why government may feel that it was universal and as such people who didn't need it were getting, this is very, very targeted. And that's the work that our districts and indeed we do through the free school meals, dispersing it through free school meals. So I would plead, and we are, and thank you for the extra agenda or extra recommendation there, Cheryl, because I think it's very important. We need to make the case to government that this money they're spending is being spent, you know, we are drilling down on the people that need it the most. And so every single penny is going to those that need it. And it's not a sort of universal that everyone gets a tenner. You know, this is for the people that need it, and absolutely we need to make sure that we can continue it in some way. Simon, do you want to come back?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to come in with a couple of things. I mean, firstly to say, you know, I alluded to the strong partnership we've got, and that's very much built on the expertise and knowledge of colleagues within district councils, particularly who are at the front line in terms of delivering the some of this funding linked to some of their targeted work around the most vulnerable in their communities, particularly based on the data that they have accessible to them. A couple of colleagues have referenced the Ilfracombe Poverty Truth Commission, so I just wouldn't want to miss the opportunity just to outline a little bit more about that. Most notably, we're working really closely with 12 people who have got lived experience of poverty or who are in poverty at the moment. And there is lots of learning, I think, for partners and this council to understand their experiences, and for some very simple requests and solutions that we could consider in terms of how we support them, how we deliver services, and how we respond at a place to some basic needs that they have and have identified. So very happy to talk to colleagues down the line around the Poverty Truth Commission.
Thank you, Simon. Richard.
Thank you very much, Leader. As well as the Deputy Leader, I would also like to declare an interest there as the leader at Teignbridge District Council. We also distribute this, vital money out to those most vulnerable in our communities. And I'd just like to say a big thank you to those teams that have got this funding for us. Our revenue and benefits team, as executive member at Teignbridge for years on that, see how this is actually distributed out to the people that really do need it, and every penny is spent correctly. But thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Dan, are you going to another
Leader, for the avoidance of doubt, and so that I don't fall foul of the monitoring officer, I am the leader of South Hams District Council. So we will also be distributing. While I have the microphone, I'd like to say that the fact that option 3 contains the establishment of a contingency fund to support vulnerable families is really important. I get that we haven't got the 2.5 million just to magic to replace the shortfall. Would it be that we did, Leader? Because frankly, it would be money very well spent, but this looks to be a reasonably satisfactory alternative. So it'll have my full support.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Dan. Right, so we've got the recommendations there with the extra recommendation. I don't know if that's, Aaron, did you want to read that out or
it
put it on the
was,
screen?
I'll paraphrase, Chair, if that's okay.
Yeah,
but it's
of course.
about writing to government and Devon MPs regarding the lack of clarity on the new fund, and I'll find the exact wording for that, and the ongoing concern for rural thereof.
And who will that be coming from? Cheryl to do that? I think it should probably. Yeah, you're right with that.
Happy to do that. Yeah.
Good. Right. So, Cheryl, do you want to move those recommendations with the extra one added on F?
Yeah,
that
very
Karen's just
happy to
paraphrased?
move the recommendations of option 3 and the added recommendation that you've already mentioned.
Right. Okay. Well, I will second those recommendations. So, all those in favour, please show. Thank you. Excellent. Agenda item 12, which is you again, Cheryl.
Me again.
Yeah.
So I've got some good news this time. Devon has received a late allocation in late April of 1.4 million from the Department of Education to expand adult skills provision. The funding must be used within the academic year and is performance-based. We only get paid for successful delivery, and the aim is to support adults 19+ to gain qualifications that improve employability, confidence and progression. And we are being asked to deliver around an extra 1,000 learning places. Learners will include unemployed adults, those on low wages, rural residents, and those with additional barriers to learning. Courses include English, maths, digital skills, vocational training linked to local jobs, and confidence building programmes. Torbay has asked Devon to deliver their share of provision due to capacity issues, and this joint approach supports consistency. Given the numbers involved and the timescale, there's not enough time or capacity to scale up Learn Devon in-house delivery. It would require 30% more tutors and space. So the plan instead is to commission multiple smaller local providers through a competitive procurement process to deliver the activity. A small team will be set up within Learn Devon to manage contracts and oversee quality. Providers will be expected to offer flexible, inclusive and community-based delivery, especially in rural or underserved areas. The project builds capacity ahead of adult skills devolution to the Devon and Torbay Combined County Authority in 2026. The key risks include under-delivery, which affects funding drawdown and possible early Ofsted inspection due to expansion. The risks are being managed through tight procurement, experienced oversight and a focus on provider quality. The Cabinet is being asked to approve the commissioning approach and delegate authority to finalise contracts and delivery arrangements.
Thank you, Gerald. Richard.
Thank you, Leader. I support this pilot scheme of 1.4 million managed by our procurement team through Learn Devon. We already support some 6,000 learners each year. And although this amount is across Devon and Torbay, with South Devon College having the lion's share, I have seen the work that they have done firsthand, and it's commendable. This money will be spent on adult skills, as was said, fund and free college courses for jobs, and that is to be welcomed. Thank you.
No, thank you. I reiterate what you said about South Devon College. It's a fantastic institution and they do a fantastic job. Julian, did you want to say anything, or is it not, or who would it be? Kerry, sorry, Kerry.
It's quite all right.
Schools and
Not at all. I've got nothing to add.
No, thank you. Members, and any more to add here? Jackie.
Just to welcome this. I think it's really important, and it's that really important period when young people can sort of like find a bit of get a bit lost on the way. So having that greater opportunities at that particular important time, I think is really important. But just generally things that help with people with replacing, getting better skills and more opportunities to work, and giving them more flexibility for different jobs, and that, you know, helps with adaptation. And I think that's a really good opportunity for young people and everybody actually to improve our opportunities for work. It's, you know, we've got a bit of a problem with employment in this county. So I think anything that can help that is to be welcomed. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jackie. And I think it would be churlish not to thank the DFE for the extra funding that we got. Always welcome. And we will, I'm sure in Devon, we will spend it in a best cost-effective way for the benefit of our residents. Right, so Cheryl or Richard, Cheryl, you're going to move the recommendation.
Do you want me to write a letter to thank them?
No,
very happy to be.
I'm
yeah,
happy to second that.
excellent, Richard. So all those in favour, please show. Thank you. Agenda item 12. No, are we? Yeah, 13. So the A382 Major Road Network Scheme. Dan. Over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Dan Thomas, Cabinet Member for Highways. The first of my two reports this morning will be far quicker. This is a recommendation that Cabinet are asked to approve that the County Council compulsory purchase order is withdrawn. Background on this, members, the 382 Newton Abbot Churchill's roundabout. Basically, in 23, we were hoping we were going to get money from the major road network schemes through the Network North policy, which was reallocations from the HS2. We're not getting the money, unfortunately, so the scheme that was planned is necessarily having to be reduced in size. Thus, we don't want to be liable for the compulsory purchase and be liable for the land, because I'm sure Cabinet Member for Finance will tell us that there's no money in the budget for that. So basically, so that we don't fall liable, the recommendation is, unfortunately, that the compulsory purchase order is withdrawn, because obviously we're pulling the scheme back accordingly so that our costs are managed.
No, thank you. No, disappointing about that HS2 funding. Richard, did you want to say anything? It's in Teambridge, or?
Thank you, Leader. Disappointing, but unfortunately we have to cut our cloth.
No, agreed. Jackie?
I think this is a classic example of how messing around nationally at government, where they may or may not give us money, is actually wasting public funds at the local level. Because obviously money has been spent setting up these reports, looking into it, going ahead with legal elements of purchase. And now that, you know, withdrawal probably costs more money for what seems to me, looking at the map, a relatively small area. And I think it's just regrettable that, you know, if they say there's something's going to be available and we put what we need to put together and make a good case to get this for good purpose, because obviously what we're losing is access for cycling and walking, you know, so improving those opportunities and access. So it is regrettable, and it is not keeping people out of cars like we would hope to do. But it just feels to me like it's, you know, the government should be a little bit more mindful of the impact on the local authorities in terms of how it hits us money-wise, because, you know, so-called good old days when people set up what they needed for budgets and got it and then carried on with the work for the next year, 2 years, 5 years, it's long gone, and we're just going into bids, and it's expensive waste of money and time, I think, a lot of the time. So, and this is a classic example of it. But anyway, it's what we have to do. It's just tidying up, really, isn't it? So thank you.
No, thank you, Jackie, and the point's well made there. Rod, did you want to add anything?
Thank you, Chair. No, I've got nothing particular to add.
Yeah, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm just finding the line here. So, in essence, we thought, so the line is this: in October 2023, government announced there'd be an increase in funding for existing major road network schemes through its Network North policy, which was funding reallocated from the High Speed 2 rail project. This funding is no longer available. So what I'd like to hear from perhaps an officer, so we get it in the minutes, is what actually happened there? Which decision was it, by whom in government, that did that? Had we had a reasonable expectation that we were on, and then it was off, and how was that delivered to us? Thank you.
The Network North document that was published, the government at the time said that they were going to increase the funding arrangement. So when you put in the strategic outline business case, they said they would fund 85% of the scheme. The Network North document came out and said, actually, recognising inflation and the problems we'd had post-COVID, post-war in Ukraine with hyperinflation, that they would actually up that from 85% to 100%. And that's never actually been carried forward. I think it's not much more else I can say than that, other than it was written in that Network North document, but it never actually came to pass.
Leader, if I may, it rather reinforces the point Councillor Hodgson was making.
Be very disappointing. Yeah. Okay. Any more on that? Dan, it's your.
In which case, Leader, yes, please. I'd like to move the recommendation at 1A, please.
Yeah. Okay. And I'll second that. So all those in favour, please show. Good. And now all substantive item. Dan, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So now it's time for the county road highway maintenance capital budget and progress on 24-25 schemes and the proposals for 25-26 programmes. So this, members, you will have seen is a very large document. I thank the director and her team for putting a tremendous amount of work into this document. It's a really important one. It shows the direction of travel, pun intended, but more importantly, I think, and following on from the Cabinet Member for Finance, it paints a necessarily honest and at times bleak picture of where we are. But I want to start off by saying that you gave me this role in May, I have been nothing but impressed by the professionalism, by the diligence, by the objectivity, and by the welcome of members of the department for constructive challenge, for potential change of working practices, for transparency, and most importantly for honesty, because I think the one message that I would like the public to hear today is that every single member of the Highways Department, from the director down to the neighbourhood highways officers that we deal with on a daily basis, members, are all acutely aware that we do not do what we would like to do when we would like to do it. Purely and simply in layman's terms, we know as a department that we are not able to do the things the public wants us to do as quickly as we would like to do. And that is not because we are not staffed correctly, because we are. It's not because we aren't staffed by the right people, because we are. It is simply because, as this report will show, we are grossly under-resourced by central government. And I think we have to make that very clear from the start of this council and make it clear for as long as that is the case. And I will take you in a minute, members, to specific parts of this report that illustrate that. But if we begin by being clear of knowing where we are, if you turn in your report to 3.2, which is the assessment of carriageway conditions, which you will find somewhere around page 128. You will see there the definitions that you need to be aware of red, amber and green, and what they mean, and how red is likely to show considerable deterioration and maintenance within the next 12 months, and amber some, and green no further. That's particularly important. If you've looked at the appendices, Appendix A at the back of the report shows an appendix with quite a lot of red on it. Now, that red generally relates to the most minor of our roads, okay, the not A roads, not B roads, but the unclassified roads. Of course, unclassified roads make up a significant percentage of roads in our county. So you can see from this report that we are being very honest about the fact that the state of roads is not as we would want at this stage. That's our starting point. You need to be very aware of that. If you look over at 3.2.1, you'll actually see that it gives you that statistic that 25% of the county roads are in red condition. Of the unclassified roads are in a red condition. A quarter of our unclassified roads are red. You need to be aware of that. But then when you look down at the bottom of page 129, you begin to see the reasons why. And look at the backlog figure, members. Backlog defined as the total cost of treatment to remove all lengths of network that are likely to require maintenance, i.e. to get rid of the reds, would cost the county £390 million. And then to carry on, to keep us in a steady state, not a gold-plated state, members, but a steady state, would be a further £102 million per year. And you will see again at the top of page 130, those figures are broken down for you. Now, already, I would imagine those of you that have read these papers will see an immediate problem coming down the track, which is that we don't have £250 million to put those roads right. And even if we did, our annual capital budget on roads doesn't get near the 102 million to then keep them at that steady state moving on. So whatever we do, irrespective of the number of emails that we all receive, whatever we do, we are not, under the current funding formula, going to solve the problem. And I think we have to be really clear about that. Really clear. So, sorry to be depressing, but I think it's really important we're aware of that. There is further information at section 5 of the report that talks about the funding gap. It's important that members are aware of that because it demonstrates the fact that, for example, the backlog of carriage repairs in England and Wales has reached almost 17 billion. So we are not alone. But that is a little consolation to the residents of Devon. But I just think it's really important we flag that up. Okay, if we turn on the report to section 7, the Capital Highway Maintenance Programme, that shows you that there was some extra money put in May 24. There was an extra £10 million, and it shows you how that money was spent. And I only highlight that to you, members, because in the context of everything I've just said, you can see that whilst £10 million is welcome, exactly, it doesn't do an awful lot in the general scheme of things compared to what we wanted to do. That doesn't mean it wasn't welcome, because it was, but I just, all the time, I need you to be aware of where we are with this. So if we go on to section 8 in the report, this is where it shows how money is proposed to be spent, and it gives you a breakdown of some of the areas around highway structural maintenance, around the skid resistance treatment, around local asset capital programme. It breaks down for you through and through where money is being spent. Okay, you will note at 8.2.2 route treatments. Okay, and that's a programme of patching and small resurfacing on highly trafficked main routes. So there are measures being put in place. Okay, there are measures being put in place. There is money being spent, but I think throughout the messages we have a serious problem with the amount that's being spent. Okay, so the report is there. It was written necessarily before effectively this council came to power because it had to be. It's a document looking back and a document looking forward, and fiscal prudent financial management necessarily means that this report had to be written. What it doesn't do, and I think you will be aware of that, is it doesn't necessarily talk about the difference between how things have been and how we would like things to be in the future. So if I would turn back to the report, I would just want to, before I take questions, Leader, if I may, I just want to go back to the recommendations at the start, because I've done some work with the director, and again, I'm very grateful for her support in this. The recommendations we need to make some slight amendments to, which I think Karen's going to put up on the screen so you can see. So there are quite a long list of recommendations, but I think it's really important I talk around this, if I may, Leader, just because at item F on the recommendations, we are taking out references to item 9.1 on the report. Now, 9.1 on the report talks about the term maintenance contract. We don't want to look at the term maintenance contract as part of this report, because what we'd like the audit committee to do, you'll see at G, is to ask Councillor Connett and the audit committee to form a task group to review the previous cabinet decision on the future delivery model for highway maintenance, specifically relating to the delivery of the highway term maintenance contract. So we just want audit to have a look at that, and that is looking at the process and the procedure that brought it to that brought cabinet to the decision in the previous council around that particular part of the term maintenance contract. So that's going to be looked at separately. Then moreover, and more importantly, from our point of view, cabinet members, we campaigned on the election campaign on a number of issues, but I think one of the ones that really we were unified on was the frustration we heard from residents about how gangs will come out and they will fill in one pothole and they won't fill in another one. Now, I need to be really crystal clear. They are doing their job when they do that. They are doing what has been asked of them, what the contract expects them to do. What little h is asking, and what we are asking, is a change. So by doing this, by asking the highway service to carry out a trial of filling all potholes, not just safety defects when visiting a site, that is a change that we are specifically requesting. So by not doing that before, nobody has fallen foul of what they should have done. They were doing as they were asked. But this is where we would like to establish what it's going to cost and how effective it will be if, on those lower categorisation of roads that are necessarily safer to work on because they're not as busy, what will the impact be when a gang goes out and mends everything it can see rather than just the reported pothole it's there for? I think that is a really important message. And if I may, Leader, I think it indicates how the department is up for the challenge, because it's a very different notion from where we were before. And then at little I, another hot potato for cabinet and indeed for all councillors, we're asking the highway service to establish the budgetary implications of accelerating the remarking of white lines. Now, we have a significant issue with white lines in terms of, not in terms of their quality, but in terms of their lifespan. So if you look at the time it will realistically take the county to do what I would call a fourth road bridge and get to the end before it starts again, long before we get to the end, some of the white lines that we did at the start have gone. Not because there's anything wrong with them, but just because they've outlived their natural lifespan. So we have an issue there that we need to get around. It might be, I know the leader would like to talk about various other ways of working with parishes and towns around this, but in the first instance, we'd like to establish those implications, because I think those two issues for us around potholes and around white lining have been real issues with the public. And make no mistake, members, this, no one will tell you more than I the importance of adult and children's services, particularly the latter. I'm a primary school teacher when I'm not here, so I'm fully aware of that. But this is a universal service. Everybody in the county uses our roads, and it's important we do our best to get them right. Happy to answer questions, Leader.
Thank you, Dan. Very comprehensive and again, very honest. Denise.
Fantastic report, well delivered, Dan. Can I just ask in point G, when we're asking to relating to the highway tram maintenance contract. Can we add something in there as well about the highway officers that we have in our neighbourhoods who raise a pothole as a problem that is not then potentially a dangerous one, doesn't meet the criteria, but they see it as a dangerous one in that it may be in a cycle route, a busy junction. Same with white lines on particularly busy junctions. If the NHO sees that as a potential problem, can that be written somewhere into the contract to say that they have some sway in some leniency?
Can I just check it? So are you saying that a surface defect is reported, but it doesn't meet the criteria as a pothole? So at that point, what would you like to happen?
I think if it's been raised by the NHO as a potential danger, but it doesn't meet the criteria exactly, I think some sway needs to be given to their opinion.
I think if a neighbourhood highways officer thought that there was something established as a danger, I think that would be a very separate conversation. I think that the point is, and I'm just checking that Mr. Richards is nodding at me, but I'm happy to give way, Mr. Richards, if you want to. But my understanding is that if a neighbourhood highways officer saw something as a danger, that would be a defect that would be dealt with.
Yeah, that happens at the moment. I think where we have to look at or consider is when we get into the depths of winter and we've got known verified safety defects that have got a liability assessed with them, they will always take priority over something that is non-safety in line with our policy. But at the moment, particularly now, if the neighbourhood officer sees something, they can report back to our network response team and they will put that into their programme.
It's encouraging to hear. It's not quite what I've heard, but I think that maybe is just lost in translation. But yeah, I'll keep an eye on it. Thanks.
Jackie.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to speak on this more broadly, but just to pick up on that particular point, that's been my experience too. You know, I won't, obviously this isn't the place for details, but certainly a very lethal roundabout was declared as being all right, and you wouldn't dare go around it on a bicycle for about 6 months. So, you know, I share that experience as well. Yeah, I just wanted to say, actually, I really welcome the fact that we're reviewing that discussion that happened a couple of years ago about the different contracts. I was certainly on CIRS at the time, and I thought there was a very thorough investigation, and I was quite disappointed with how it changed. So you know, in terms of the contract, how the awarding, etc. So I think that's a really good opportunity now at the beginning of this new council to review that, because highways is something that gets so much publicity, so much of our parishes and our residents talking about it. And I must say, I'm not happy about the fact there seems to be an active encouragement for people to go out and mend the potholes themselves, because some of the people that I've heard have actually said to me, oh, I'm going to go out and do it. But the last person I think should actually be let loose on the road. So I think it's something that we really need to look at carefully before we have a serious accident or something terrible happens and we think, oh, for goodness sake, whose idea was that? So I think it's, you know, it's good to get, you know, this more comprehensive review and see what we can do in conjunction with our town and parish councils, because I think there is a very strong recognition out there that, you know, maybe parish and town councils can help. In fact, some of the things they are doing is raising funds towards certain things. And I think, you know, but that's been looked at quite a lot. I know that you've looked at, we talked about it quite a few times at CRS about, you know, there's kind of partnerships. And I think it's something that, you know, there's a bit of an open door. Some of those, our parish and town councils have got really good clerks. They're very organised. And as we go forward with LGR, I think it's an opportunity to bear that in mind as well when we're having this conversation. Thank you.
Can I just come back, Leader, and just say, you know, with regard to villages and towns dealing with non-defect potholes that don't meet the criteria, I mean, obviously the road warden scheme is a really important part of this in making sure that those guys know what they're doing. And certainly there are communities within my division that have used it for a number of years with a fair degree of success. Although where I would completely agree with you, Councillor Hodgson, is in a perfect world, they wouldn't be required. That's the point. In a perfect world, we would have the resources from central government to be able to deal with all of these things. Although quite often parishes are choosing through the road warden scheme to fill in potholes that don't, under the national criteria, actually meet the criteria that we would be asking our teams to resolve.
I come back on that just to say that what I was meaning was, I mean, because we, for example, as a parallel, we dropped the lengthsman scheme and parishes now employ somebody to do that work. That means that person has training and liability and all the rest of it. Whereas the road warden scheme can be a little bit more vague than that, as far as I understand it. And so I just feel it'd be a little bit more organised, and it would actually be through a proper sort of organised programme in conjunction with the parishes, perhaps determining it, but certainly more of a paid, proper trained role, I think it means that we can guarantee more safety on the roads, because ultimately at the end of the day, often the more vulnerable road users are the ones likely to kind of be tipped off a bike through a badly mended pothole or trip in a street if you're elderly or in a wheelchair or whatever. So I just feel it's very important that when we do have road mending, as much as I hate all the holes in the road, that it's done properly. That's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, I'll let the director come in, but before she does, all I was going to say was just to let you know that we provide third-party liability insurance for the works, and we provide free training as well.
Provided the road warden is a volunteer and not a paid employee of the parish council, because then it is the liability of the parish council, and that's the bit I just wanted to clarify from what you just said, Jackie.
Cheryl, did you come to you, Richard?
Yeah, it's just in relation in the report to the dragon patcher, because I don't know if I'm lucky or unlucky, but up in Torridge, the dragon patcher is used quite a lot and quite often get complaints about it. So in some areas, I think maybe it works fairly well and it does a short-term sort of improvement. But in a lot of areas, the road isn't prepared, or it's not prepared at all, and it just goes over the mud and the grass, and I get a lot of complaints about it. So I just wanted to raise that as an issue, because it's viewed as a waste of money in a lot of parts of Torridge where I go to parish councils. So I had to raise that today.
Well, I think that my answer is you're lucky in the sense that your district is able to take the dragon patcher where mine is not, but clearly you're unlucky if the work's not been done properly. So in all seriousness, I'm happy to come and look, or if you've got photographic evidence. I mean, the team are going to want to know. The whole point about the dragon patcher is it's supposed to provide a preventative layer that extends the life of the carriageway. So if it's not doing that properly, we absolutely don't want to waste money on this. You know, I was with the team and the Minister for Future Roads a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the fact that we do a lot of really innovative stuff, and we'd like more money from the government to do more innovative stuff, but it needs to work. So if you feel something's not working, please let us know and we'll come and look at it.
Thank you, I will. And also in relation to local lengthsmen, because a lot of the problems come from the water on the roads creating the damage. So what are we doing in terms of local lengthsmen to keep the ditches clear and the water off the roads?
Well, look, I mean, I've spoken, the highways team know my views that in rural areas, the holy trinity, without wishing to be blasphemous, are potholes, white lines and drainage, basically. We've looked at the first two today. Rest assured, number 3 is on my list. The network operations team will tell me that if you live in a rural area, traffic lights and traffic signs are more likely to be the third member of yours. But for us in the rural areas, you're absolutely right. You know, getting the drains clear, getting the puddle holes cleared, getting the water off the roads is key. So that will be I will be looking at that in the fullness of time.
Good news, thank you.
Richard.
Thank you very much, Leader. I don't want to labour too much on potholes, but I will say while I've been sat here listening, I've had 3 emails flash up on my screen from concerned residents, and I saw potholes within that. It is the biggest issue that we have, and I welcome the view that we should be looking at all the potholes when the team come out to repair 3, and there's a 4th one there, that's being looked at whether we can actually do that 4th pothole. I'm just saying that hypothetically, but in my area there's 5 or 6. So I really welcome that from the cabinet member and support him 100%.
Thank you. Could I just use this as a plea? Because if I had £1 for every time it happened, I wouldn't need to sit here because I could be in Barbados. Please make sure that your residents are reporting potholes, because they do not get reported by osmosis. And people do think that that is the case. It's really easy to do, but I would ask all members at every parish council you go to, or at every parish council report you send, please make sure there is a link to report a pothole on the website, because it is so important.
No, thank you, Dan. Connor.
Members, I would just ask, I'm reading some of the recommendations. We have to be transparent with everyone in terms of implications of a trial, in terms of any implications legally, contractually, or staffing or financially. So I just want to go to the monitoring officer for some advice, because in terms of the public, we do a trial and it's fantastic to see the innovation, but we must come back with the implications of the trial. Going back to the first item on the agenda today in terms of our financial capability. So I just would like to go to monitoring officer, see if she could advise us to make sure we carry out this trial in an appropriate and correct way.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Thank you, Leader. You'll have seen us whispering, and it was just as I was picking up the contractual points you were raising. I was wondering if in recommendation H, where we've got the site, when visiting a site to potentially establish a budget implications, if we could add in there legal and finance implications and HR implications, please. And then on to the end part where it's in consultation with Cabinet Member for Highways and Director for Climate Change. And again, if you could just add on and Director of Legal and Democratic, just so we pick up the contractual issues that you've been raising, which I think is what you were talking about anyway. Thank you.
Very happy to accept those substantive recommendation, Leader.
Good, and just on that, and am I right in understanding that it's not a trial across the whole of Devon, but actually will be specific areas, so it's sort of pilot rather than everywhere?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay, good. Just so we're aware of that. So Richard, if they suddenly say, well, if you go back and report to them, oh, we've decided we're going to do this, and then they don't, it's because unfortunately you won't be one of those pilot areas. I mean, I'm very much hoping that if we do it properly, it actually will save the council money. Because rather than going out and mending a hole and then 2 weeks later coming back and mending the hole next door, they would have all been done at the same time. So that's good. I'd just like to pick up the point that Jackie was alluding to, and that is our relationship with our parish and towns in particular, because I would very much like to see a sort of formal protocol whereby that gives the opportunity for towns and parishes to supplement financially works that might need to be done. And I appreciate that in an ideal world, you pay your council tax, everything gets done. But as we know as councillors, that just isn't the case. And there are times when lines need painting or roads need mending, where actually if the parish council or the town council are prepared to support financially, that would make a massive difference. And I think that we need to get that on a more formal setting. I know that we've talked about it, Dan, and talked about it with Meg and Rob as well, that I think there is an opportunity here that we use the enthusiasm and in some cases the resources of parishes and towns to expedite the work that needs to be done, and in that sense we can make the money go further. I also think that parishes in particular and parish councillors can be, they want to be supportive and helpful in what we're doing, and they are in a way our eyes and ears out in these very rural patches. So when things go well, we want to know about it, but also when they don't go so well, we want them to be able to feel that they're in a position to report that, which means the communications between the gangs that are going out and the parishes, the localities where they're actually working needs to be better, in my view, and that will be part of a protocol that can be drawn up. So, once again, thank you for that, Dan.
Just showing it's being added on as a.
Okay. Oh, right, brilliant. Yeah, no, thank you for that. That's even better. And obviously, thank you to Meg and Rob for obviously been a very constructive couple of months working with Dan to come up with a good way forward. I think we'll see what audit has to say, what they come back with. I mean, I think it's no secret that my preferred option is to do things in-house, but I'm not dogmatically opposed to outsourcing. And if that's what the decision is, then so be it. But I do think that when the contract is drawn up, that we must make sure that it's got the flexibility within it, so that local communities can get what they want as well. In the sense that, you know, if they're prepared to pay for it, then they should crack on and do it. But that presumably would all come within the protocol, and I see that yeah, Maria's had her input on that recommendation tool. So we've got the financial, legal, HR and contractual issues are addressed. Yeah, no, excellent. Jackie.
Sorry, just while we're still on this point, just very briefly, some of the biggest damage that's done to the road services, particularly when there's a lot of extreme weather, is where we have, dare I say, rural transport. Some of this very, very heavy, very, very large rural transport that doesn't just hit the road surface, it hits the drains and it hits the sides. Quite damaging, particularly in Staverton, one of my parishes. There's a constant situation there. But also some of these heavy lorries and heavy vehicles that are going through on the A roads too, that do an awful lot. And I just wonder whether there's been any representations to government to suggest that there should be increased road tax for those larger vehicles, because I know they probably pay quite a lot already. But the fact that the public in this county are paying a huge amount for some of that, and you know, many of you will be aware of my dream is that we get a lot of particularly freight back onto rail, but that's not going to deal with the farming situation. But I do think a recognition of the sheer level of damage that some of these bigger vehicles are doing should be reflected in the money they have to pay for their road tax, because I don't think we even get the benefit of road tax these days, do we, towards our road repairs? And a lot of that's where it was meant to be set up to pay for.
Leader, if I may, that Councillor Hodgson's answered her own question there. I mean, the challenge we have with that is that road tax is not a road fund tax and hasn't been a road fund tax since 1936. So the reality is that even if we were to ask those vehicles, even if we were to lobby the government and ask them to pay more, we wouldn't guarantee that we would get the money for our necessary improvements. So I think it's going to have to be a balancing act there, Leader, over the fact that, you know, in supporting particularly the rural economy, we have to acknowledge the fact that sometimes this is going to happen. And you know, I for one, whilst appreciating the comments Councillor Hodgson makes and accepting that it's not ideal if the road service is damaged, at the same time, you know, we live in a semi-rural county. We have to acknowledge that, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Cheryl.
I'd like to declare an interest as a farmer. And also I think as lead member for rural affairs, I think the farming community has been hit really hardly. I would not support that. Thank you.
Simon.
I think I also, as with Gerald, need to declare an interest, and quite frankly, I absolutely support what she said. We live in a very, very rural county, and we must congratulate our food producers rather than discriminate against us that we all feel. Thank you.
No, fair enough. Fortunately, it's not us to take that decision, so we don't even need to fall out about it.
If I just may come back, it wasn't an attempt to try and smack the farming community, because I absolutely agree with the points that have been made, but it's to recognise that some of the really big vehicles do damage, and if farmers could use slightly smaller vehicles, it would have a lot less impact on our roads. And that's, I think sometimes if you look at the cost differential, then sometimes it would encourage them to realise that maybe it is quite a high cost to the areas that they live in, because they're causing so much damage that doesn't get fixed very quickly. And I think it's just about moderation, really. It wasn't about trying to hit anybody in the pocket. That certainly those that they don't deserve it.
Dan, did you want to say something on that, or?
No, I think, you know.
Okay. Are there any more on this subject? I mean, it's a massive area, and as we all know, having just fought an election, it's the biggest thing that's on people's minds out there. So it's absolutely right and proper that I think we have another look at it and come to, you know, to find some more innovative ways to make a ever-reducing pot of money go further. From my own point of view, I think it's very disappointing that the government has shied away from increasing fuel duty, which raises billions of pounds, which could then be invested in our road network. I appreciate it's not popular, but actually The same people who complain about it are the same people that complain about the state of our roads. And you know, there needs to be a realization that if you want to have better roads, you've got to pay for it somehow. Fuel duty to me seems quite a sensible way of doing it. But there we are. Any more? Dan, do you want to propose all of those?
Yes, Leader, I'm very happy to propose them. Members will note the amendments and the new additions up on the screen, but happy to propose recommendations A through to J.
Thank you, and I'll happily second that. Simon will second those. Thank you, Simon. And can I see all those in favour, please show? Excellent, thank you. Right, agenda item 15, the minutes of standing items. So the Standing Advisory Council on Religious Education.
Chair, due to an admin oversight, they've not been published in time, so can we defer that set of minutes?
Okay,
please?
we've heard that, so we're going to defer those. Yeah. I'm going to quickly look at my crib sheet. Yeah, no, so to delegate it, so item agenda 16, delegated action, that's for noting. Oh, sorry, no, back to the Devon Education Forum minutes for noting. We all happy to note those? So noted? Yep, okay, noted. 16, the delegated action, that again, that's for noted. Are we all happy to note that? Forward plan. Don't know if members have looked at that. Are we happy with the forward plan as it is? Jackie?
I couldn't see 20's plenty policy for next month.
So I think that's coming forward as we've deferred the motion, and that'll be a report about the motion that's coming up. Am I correct in that? So
yeah.
So it's so although it's not on there, it definitely will be.
Okay.
July.
Making sure.
Yeah.
It's
No.
covered under, we don't list sort of references to committee's notice of motion separately. There's a generic item, and as a team,
Okay.
well, I pick them up. I make sure it happens.
So I need to now make sure I can communicate with the highways team to actually start developing that policy. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, the highways department have been tasked with producing a briefing paper, and I'm sure they'll be in touch with you in due course on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Okay,
Just to be clear, Leader, it'll come to me as the member, and I'm happy to work with Councillor Hodgson on that.
Good. Yeah. No, I think it's your motion, isn't it, Jackie? Yeah. Right. And then there are no items to be taken as part 2. So I think that's it. So I will formally declare the meeting closed. Thank you all very much.